podcast, shooting the shit about the Suns since 2019.
Thanks for pressing play and welcome to another edition. Oh yeah, the Suns Jam Session podcast. My name is John Voida, managing editor, brightsideofthesun.com. Appreciate you hanging out here. Shooting the shit about the Suns since 2019. That's right. It's 2025. Jesus. We've been doing this for a long time. I'll be going solo on this one. Matthew has, I think it's called a life, and he's out there living it. So kudos to him. Excited for him to be out there living that life. But I got things to talk about. There's a lot going on in the world of the Phoenix Suns, and we like to come to you during the off season with a weekly podcast to talk about what's going on with the Phoenix Suns. But before we get into the news relative to the Suns and ultimately the purpose of this conversation, which is the Kevin Durant situation, the point and the counterpoint, I want to remind everyone, go ahead, subscribe, rate, review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, help us out. We're here for you every night after games during the season, and we're here for you during the off season. You know why? Because we care, because we give a shit, because we're addicted to the Phoenix Suns. If you happen to be on Twitter or Twitch or what's the other, Instagram, Facebook, head over to that channel, the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/@SunsJam. And again, give us a sub. Just trying to get, I think we're shy of like 4,000. It'd be cool to get to 4,000 subs. But we got stuff to talk about. We got news going on about the Phoenix Suns.
And now, ladies and Jamsters, news about the Phoenix Suns.
All right. Some different things that are going on, so we got to hit them. First and foremost, an article that was put out earlier this week by the Bleacher Report rating the rookies. And the Phoenix Suns rookies per Bleacher Report, and we know that Bleacher Report can kind of be clickbaity and not necessarily something that you should take too much stock in, but they graded out the Phoenix Suns rookies as a C. And it's one of those things that kind of took me off guard, if you will, because I just don't know if I was expecting. I haven't really thought about it, but when you talk about the rookies, Ryan Dunn, Oso Ighodaro, you know, the list of highlights this season was painfully short. You know, there'd be a gritting win here or a flash, some effort there, but there was very few solitary moments that we can look back upon when we talk about the 2024-25 season and be grateful for. This was a season that ultimately was defined less by achievement and more by unmet expectations, destined to be referenced for years as the most disappointing in franchise history. And the glimmer of light I feel in that darkness was the rookies. Ryan Dunn, Oso Ighodaro, you know, with their youth, with their bounce, with their unrelenting energy, they brought to life a team that looked like it was stuck in a trance, and you can feel it. The game would lull, the crowd would sink, but then the rookies would check in, and suddenly things would stir. There was movement, there was defense, there was block shots, transition jams, pick and roll slams. They played with the kind of urgency that made you sit up and ask, why can't the rest of the roster match this fire? And so I ran a poll on brightsideofthesun.com to see what grade Suns fans give our rookies. And 25% of the 302 votes came out at a B+. We had 11% for A+, 14% for A, 13% for A-. Pretty much across the board, it was B- and above. Very few rated them under that B. And that's something, you know, if you're watching along live in the chat, what do you rate the rookies? What letter grade do you give them for this season? Because, again, the Bleacher Report gave them a C. And like a lot of people, a lot of you sickos out there, I listen to a slurry of NBA podcasts. Bill Simmons, The Low Show is what it's called now. And all of them have been rattling off their all-rookie teams, and none of them had Ryan Dunn on them. And I couldn't help but feel a tinge of frustration none of them even floated the idea of Ryan Dunn. And I get it. I'm not delusional. Oso Ighodaro is not going to be mentioned, but Dunn, like, he played 74 games and he started 44 of them. He wasn't just a bench spark. He was like a regular, dependable part of this Phoenix rotation. You look at the numbers, though, and then you start to kind of understand why. Like, among rookies, he finished 16th in minutes played, 17th in total points, 15th in rebounds. That's not nothing, but then again, maybe it makes sense. If Ryan Dunn is starting 44 games for your team, chances are you got bigger problems, and the Suns did. So sure, I understand why he's not cracking anyone's top 10 rookies list. He was the 28th pick, and he played like it, but maybe part of that frustration comes from how warped my lens it has become. After watching the Suns stumble and spiral, any flash of energy, any burst of defensive competence felt monumental this season. Dunn gave us just that. He was the heartbeat of a team that too often flatlined. And in a year starved for meaning, even a faint pulse felt like something to hold on to. So that's why, again, we're too close to the situation, I feel, to think that the rookies, a C I think is appropriate. Like, they played well. They played more than they probably had to because this team sucked. And I said it before in a previous podcast when we're talking about upside relative to Ryan Dunn, I think he's a rotational piece. I don't think he's a consistent NBA starter until his shot comes around. It's not going to be something that you're going to rely on because you can't. You simply can't. So taking a look at some of the people in the chat, David Yolovich gets Dunn a B and Oso a C. And again, Eddie Yee, what's Dunn's reasonable ceiling? I think it is a rotational piece. I'm not even saying a starter, like somebody who can come in off the bench and disrupt for a bit. I'm trying to think of a good example, like Jonathan Isaac. Obviously a different archetype as a player, but Jonathan Isaac comes in off the bench for Orlando and just kind of disrupts things for a few minutes at a time. So that's kind of where I fall with this. Other news, obviously, coming out of the front office. There's the conversations about how the front office is going to be restructured. And we kind of knew this after the Matt Ishbia press conference a week ago, when both Josh Bartlestein and James Jones sat up and gave their thoughts and opinions and really kind of took a couple bullets from Matt Ishbia, right? Like, Bartlestein's like, hey, man, like, he's got nothing to do with business decisions or roster decisions. That's all us. When clearly he's had his hand in pushing for Kevin Durant, most likely Bradley Beal. He's doing more than signing the checks. And then rumors are that they're doing a restructure of the front office. And my guess, ultimately, is that the front office will change the role of James Jones. He might just become the president of basketball operations, and they're going to go seek out a general manager. And there's lines of delineation there, right? And that's probably what they're trying to seek, is those lines of delineation, where essentially you have a CEO in Josh Bartlestein, and the CEO is somebody who operates, he's steering the business side of the franchise, right? From branding and revenue to culture and executive leadership. Then you have the president of basketball ops, which James Jones currently holds that position, as well as being the general manager. But it's a different position, right? So it's like, if James Jones was to maintain the president of basketball operations, he'd be focused on the long-term vision, the leadership, the overarching strategy of the team, while a new general manager would be brought in to handle the day-to-day mechanics of roster building. And I mean, that's how a lot of different organizations operate. That being said, the thing that I'm afraid of is, if it's done right, it creates a modern front office structure, one where basketball and business operate in harmony, each feeding into a shared identity, right? And that's, the buzzword, the offseason buzzword. The offseason buzzword a couple years ago, what was it? It was DeAndre Ayton. He had a buzzword that he kept kind of using. He's just like, I forget, but it's when he was, preparing to play in the FIFA World Cup for the Bahamas, and there was an interview, and he's just, he's like, I'll show you guys. Essentially, he had a buzzword in there, but if you have this and it's done correctly, it's a place where vision, execution, sustainability are no longer siloed, but they're seamlessly woven together. And it makes sense, right? You have the Suns, you have the Mercury, you have the Valley Suns. The Mercury's kind of a separate operation, and Josh Bartelstein would oversee the aspects of that. But within the Suns organization, you have the Valley Suns, you have the Phoenix Suns. But the risk in this approach, in my opinion, especially when you pair it with the fact that Matt Ishbia is a hands-on owner, is falling into the trap of too many chefs in the kitchen, right? Like too many hands in the pot. With too many voices steering the direction of the franchise, the result could quite possibly be blurred responsibilities, conflicting agendas, and a lack of a cohesive vision. Instead of streamlined decision-making, you get noise. And like right now, timing, clarity, lack of clutter, that's everything the Suns are attempting to achieve. And so this restructure, if it is indeed going to happen, which all rumors and signs point to that is what is eventually going to happen. Most likely a general manager will be brought in here. James Jones will be promoted to strictly the president of basketball operations. Josh Bartelstein will maintain his role of CEO. It's big. It's a big offseason. And the Suns, if they're going to do it, they're going to have to execute it flawlessly and then continue to execute it. Have patience with their own process. For those of you who listen to the audio form of this podcast, you will know that I released a podcast earlier today, which will technically be airing yesterday, where I did a Twitter space and I was talking about whether or not the Suns should rebuild or not and my thoughts on that. And so that's one reason I do recommend if you like this podcast and you watch this podcast, check out the audio feed. Go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, rate it 5 stars, leave a review. I'll read it right here in the pod. You'll be a celebrity. But I release sometimes just audio versions of thoughts and ideas that I have, and I'll record it on Twitter Spaces, scrape the audio, release it as a podcast. But I talked about that is having patience with the process. Something that the Suns team hasn't had the opportunity to really do so. I mean, they could have with Frank Vogel in year 1, or technically year 2 of the Ishbia era, but they chose not to be patient with the process. And it takes patience over time to determine an identity, determine your focus, determine what and where you want to go, and then execute said vision. And then if you come up short, continue to fortify your position and continue down that path. Now, obviously, if a general manager is what they're seeking, the name Bob Myers is out there. And the Stein line, Mark Stein has a great newsletter called the Stein Line. It's a Substack. He wrote about the fact that the Phoenix Suns are interested in Bob Myers. It's a name that gets us all percolating. It's a name that gets you excited because it's a name that I feel a lot of Suns fans have been kind of saying like, hey, that's the guy. That's the guy we want. So in the Stein line, it said, and I quote, the Stein line reported below on Sunday that it believes the Suns owner, Matt Ishbia, wants to reshape the front office to a to-be-determined degree before hiring a new coach. It would be precisely the sort of executive hire Ishbia is looking to make, someone who can work alongside current lead executive James Jones or outright replace him and take over basketball operations is not entirely clear. It would be super clear, though, if the Suns could successfully lure Bob Myers back to the front office world. You'd struggle to find many league observers who like their chances. Ishbia is said to have maintained a long-standing interest in trying to convince Myers to return to the role in which he presided over for 4 Warriors championships. Can the Suns actually pull it off? There's far more skepticism than belief in the desert air at the moment. No one doubts Ishbia's considerable financial resources. Don't forget that he also dismissed Monty Williams, and he goes into how he spends money and hires guys and fires guys. So that report came out today. Bob Myers, right? And that name, in theory, gets people excited. I'm not excited. Not at the prospect that Bob Myers could potentially be our GM, but again, like Ishbia's words of saying change and identity and hitting us with all the buzzwords and accountability, until it occurs, and even if it occurs, I'm not going to allow myself to be excited, because that's a tough position if Bob Myers chooses to accept it, right? To take this Phoenix Suns team, which still has the possibility of winning, he still has a path to winning, and we're going to discuss that later when we talk about point counterpoint relative to Kevin Durant, and somebody who Bob Myers has a relationship with in Kevin Durant, who helped him get 2 titles of the 4 that he was the general manager for in Golden State. But it's a tough gig. You take a look at what's gone here in the Valley, and this is kind of the backlash, if you will, is you look at how fractured this team is, and it's a tough ask of anybody to say, hey, come in here and fix this. It's like somebody not only like took a shit in the bathroom, they took that shit while they were vomiting, and they missed the fucking toilet. And then you're saying, hey, I want you to come in here and clean it up, man. Because once you're done, it's a good looking bathroom. Meanwhile, there's shit on the floor and there's puke everywhere. And it's nacho puke. You know what I'm saying? Like queso, chips, some pico de gallo on it's gross. It's gross. And it's not just one solid log. It's not they logged out a turd. They diarrheaed. There's spatter everywhere. The other side of this is like, imagine if you're Bob Myers and you're like, you know what? I do want to become a general manager again. And do you know who I absolutely fucking love and talk about all the time on ESPN? Nikola Jokic. Oh, they have a general manager positioning open. Oh, really? Which would you rather take? Which would you rather take? So, Suns fans, I know that you get excited. And I see D-Rock. What up, D-Rock in the chat? He says, Bob Myers will require full power, only one chef in the kitchen. And I agree with that. If you're going to bring him in here, you got to specifically give him full reign. And that's how you got to sell it to him. Again, too many chefs in the kitchen. Creepy Crawley, did anyone reliable report on the Bob Myers proposed hire? Excuse me. Yeah, Mark Stein did. Mark Brooks, Ishbia was trying to do what Jerry Colangelo did with the Diamondbacks. Only problem is that Jerry had a lot of experience in the sporting world, 100%. What Jerry Colangelo did is he got Curt Schilling here after already acquiring Randy Johnson, and then they won a championship. Mark Brooks, if Ishbia really wanted accountability, JJ and Bartlestein would be gone. I mean, you're not wrong. Now, again, I've talked about this in a previous point counterpoint. There's validity in wanting those guys gone, but there's also validity in keeping those guys. And it might be a stepped process. You might not want to just get rid of James Jones before you have to go through all of these upcoming steps and try to fix the franchise that he fucked up, or he fucked up on behalf of Matt Ishbia. Maybe it's a transitional period thing. Maybe with this big offseason upcoming, you bring in a Bob Myers type. Oh, my nose itches. And then you transition him into a different role. I don't know. But that's what we got right now in this week in Phoenix Suns news.
And now, ladies and jamsters, news about the Phoenix Suns.
All right. Now it's time to talk about the reason we're here today. Point counterpoint. Point counterpoint, where we are talking about Kevin Wayne Durant and the possibility of trading him. Do you trade him? Do you not trade him? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to review both sides. I'm going to give you the reason why you do not trade him. And I'm going to give you the reasons why I think in both these situations, why you do trade him. These are both articles that I've written for Bright Side of the Sun. So if you like to read these, you can. I'm going to highlight some of those things. And then at the end, I'm going to kind of give you my opinion and what I think the Suns should do. Because I'm in the process of putting together my offseason thesis. How do I think the Suns should operate this upcoming offseason? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. That's kind of my end goal with this. So we've done point, counterpoint in blowing it up. And now we're going to do point counterpoint with Kevin Durant. And Kevin, if you're watching, it's purely speculative. These are conversations fan bases have after their season ends. What are our options? You have to be analytical and negate emotion and try to operate with logic when you're talking about decisions that exist. Guess what? Trading Kevin Durant is a decision that we must face.
Who the heck are you?
I'm Kevin Durant. You know who I am. Y'all know who I am.
Did anybody see a sniper? Did anybody see anything?
I'm one of the best players to ever play the game.
All right, so we'll start with the case for keeping Kevin Durant. Why, despite the frustrations and shortcomings of this past season, the Suns shouldn't explore trade options for KD this summer. Now, obviously, there's layers and variables to this. The Bradley Beal situation looms large, but based on recent reports from John Gambadoro, it appears he's not going to be in Phoenix next season. So let's operate under that assumption for these next point counterpoint. That Bradley Beal is not on this team, that the Suns find a way to move off the Beal deal, which would drop them below the second apron and unlock some much-needed flexibility. So the question becomes, do you keep Kevin Durant? Do you double down on building around the dynamic duo of Durant and Booker and give it another shot? So here is why that answer should be yes. Point number one, every team needs a Batman. Ah, shit. Where's my mask? It's out of my reach. Where is she? Where the fuck's my Batman mask? That would have been great. Anyways, in the years leading up to the Kevin Durant trade, one truth stood stubbornly at the center of the Phoenix Suns' journey. The chosen son, Devin Booker, couldn't do it alone. He tried. God, did he try. Booker spent season after season lighting up the scoreboards, dropping 30-point nights like breadcrumbs for a fan base starving for success. He had the fire, the finesse, and the killer instinct. But what he didn't have, what the franchise failed time and again to provide, was a consistent high-level scoring partner to help carry the weight. The kind of guy who can take the wheel when Booker needed a breather or when defenses swarmed to him like bees to honey. Look at the numbers. Before Durant arrived, the highest scoring teammate that he ever had for a full season. Let me know in the chat. Who do you think Devin Booker's highest scoring teammate he ever had prior to Kevin Durant? I'll give you a second. Who do you think it was? It wasn't DeAndre Ayton. Ayton was third. It wasn't Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre was second. Eric Bledsoe at 21.1 points per game back in 2016-17, right? His sophomore year, third year in the league? Second year? 15, 16, 17. Yeah, second year. That's his highest scoring teammate he ever had before KD showed up. In this league, you need more than one elite scorer to win. That's why the Suns pulled the trigger in February 2023, pushing the majority of their chips at the center of the table to land KD. It wasn't just about adding a superstar. It was about pairing Booker with a peer, a partner, a proven assassin who could take the heat off Phoenix's franchise cornerstone and make the burden of brilliance feel just a little lighter. For everything Book has done in Phoenix, and that's a hell of a lot, I'm not sure you can peg him as a Batman archetype. He's not always the cape-wearing, city-saving, last-second hero. He's had his moments, yes. Electrifying nights, clutch shots, statement performances. But like most stars, he's had valleys to go with the peaks. And that's not a knock on Devin Booker. That's just life in the NBA. When Kevin Durant's on your roster, a player who has been a Batman his entire career, a cold-blooded closer, a walking bucket who's been torching defenses since the Bush administration, you don't overthink it. You let KD be KD. And you let Booker do what he does best, cook as the lethal co-star. Robin to Durant's Batman, that's not an insult, that's a blueprint. We saw the contrasts plain as day this season. In the 20 games that Durant missed, the Suns went 2-18. Their scoring plummeted by 9 points per game in games he wasn't there. It wasn't just noticeable, it was staggering. It showed in brutal honesty how dependent Phoenix was on Durant's presence, not just to score, but to open up the floor, to bend the defense, and to let Devin Booker breathe. That's why you keep Kevin Durant in Phoenix, because of the gravity he carries, because of the pressure he removes. Because when the game slows down in the final minutes and everything tightens, having two elite offensive weapons on the floor isn't just a necessity. It is a necessity. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. If it's just Booker, defenses load up. They blitz him. They make him give it up or force a bad shot or he turns the ball over. We've watched it too many times and we know how it ends. But with Durant, there's no clear answer for defenses. No easy out. No perfect coverage. Just fear, respect, and maybe, finally, we'll be able to get some results. So another reason why you want to keep Kevin Durant, because this is the end goal. If you're trading away a Kevin Durant type with the idea of stockpiling draft picks, which, mind you, you're not going to get a ton of for Kevin Durant, let's be honest about what you're really saying. You're hoping those picks eventually turn into an elite talent or can maybe be packaged for an elite talent. But here's the thing. You already have an elite talent right now in the flesh, in purple and orange. Kevin Durant is on your team. You don't have to squint at college tape or pray the lottery balls bounce your way or cross your fingers that a 19-year-old figures it out by year 4. You have the sure thing. You have the guy who's got 2 finals MVPs, a guy who still gets doubled at age 35, still terrifies defenders late in games, and still walks into 27 points a night like it's nothing. Trading that away for a chance to one day get back to where you already are, that's not a plan. That's a delusion dressed up as strategy. This team is undeniably built wrong around both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. That's just the truth. I've been saying it all season. Beal has been the lock on the window for Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And yes, for many, that trade that brought Durant to Phoenix is viewed as the first domino in a cascade of missteps. I'm not going to argue with that. But it's the subsequent missteps that loomed larger and truly sabotaged the Suns' ability to succeed. The flawed roster construction, the shallow bench, the duplicative skill sets. Those are the decisions that suffocated this team's ceiling. Still, the ultimate goal hasn't changed. Keep elite talent in Phoenix. And you have that in Kevin Durant. So what now? You don't fold. You don't abandon the table. You stare down the mistakes you made, own them, learn from them, and take another swing. You maximize the window that remains. Not with wishful thinking or desperation, but with intent, with urgency, with the knowledge of exactly what went wrong. Because Durant is still Durant, and you still have Devin Booker. That duo deserves a real shot. Give it to him. All right? Now, the third reason you keep Kevin Durant, the return. This is a big one for me. One thing we simply don't know right now is what Kevin Durant's market value actually is. It's certainly not what the Suns paid to get him. Phoenix gave up a treasure chest of wings, draft picks, and momentum to land Durant. They went all in on a win-now timeline, but the NBA has shifted since that moment. The new collective bargaining agreement has reshaped how teams operate. It's restrictive, it's punishing, it's a buzzsaw for teams trying to function with 3 max contracts. You know the Suns have 3 of the top 7 contracts in the league? It's fucking gross. Front offices across the league aren't flinging around draft picks like confetti anymore. They're clutching them with white-knuckled intensity. Why? Because flexibility is the new currency. Draft picks aren't just future assets. They're insurance policies. They're get-out-of-jail-free cards. And that's a card the Suns no longer hold. Draft capital gives you a shot at youth, and youth gives you availability, the most undervalued trait in today's NBA. Talent plus availability equals a real opportunity for success. Look at the young, successful teams in the league right now. They're thriving because they have players who are healthy, cheap, and developing. That's a winning formula in the modern cap environment. So let's say you do put Kevin Durant on the market. What's the return? You're not getting 4 unprotected first-round picks anymore. You're not getting a rising all-star and a bench full of high upside wings, not under this CBA. Not with Durant at 35, commanding a massive salary and carrying a recent injury history. You're probably looking at a couple mid-tier rotation players and a couple of picks, likely protected. Is that enough? Is that worth the hall pass of getting out of this era? Or do the Suns recognize that the league has changed, that the market isn't what it once was? And if they really want to contend in the near future, by next season or the one after, the best play is to keep Kevin Durant, maximize what's left of his window, and retool the roster with that end in mind. It's not about chasing what you lost. It's about building what you still have. When you look at Kevin Durant, it's restrictive in where he ends up. There's a short list, which could turn into a bidding war. And we'll talk about that in the counterpoint. But the challenge there is those teams that feel like they might be a Kevin Durant away, they don't have a ton of roster flexibility themselves. And most likely, wherever Kevin Durant ends up, it's going to be a team that he chooses and where he knows he can sign another 2-year extension. And that's not sexy to teams. That hurts the Suns' leverage in the situation. You're not trading him to Charlotte. He wants to go to the Knicks. Well, the Knicks are going to have to give up players, get out of the first apron, which they currently are in. Like Minnesota. Minnesota's a second apron team. It's got to be a 1-for-1. Now, granted, if like Beal's gone and there's flexibility within, but still the point remains. So that right there is the point. The point in keeping Kevin Durant. Now, before I go to the counterpoint, I want to go ahead and I'm going to read the chat, see if there's anything you guys are talking about over there that's worth talking about. Let's see. It's good to see that King Nacho's here. Beal must go. I can't wait for Beal to go because King Nacho's going to have nothing to talk about or something negative to talk about. Saul H. Soto, could you trade 2 players that could cover those 9 points? Suns were a high-scoring team before KD. So by 9 points, I think you mean like Bledsoe averaged 21.1 back in 2016-17, and KD averaged 27. So, I mean, that's not even 9 points, but could you trade for 2 players? The challenge, you can make up the math, right? We tried this. We've done this as Suns fans, haven't we? Enter Hideo Turkoglu and Josh Childress. Amari Stoudemire was gone, so the Suns tried to math it. We're like, well, we'll just get 2 guys who can equal that. But there's too many variables involved with that. And the big thing that I appreciate about Kevin Durant is in the last 5 minutes of the game, if he's out there and Booker's out there, the Suns are tough. The Suns were a good clutch team this year. The challenge is they just weren't in the clutch a whole bunch. That's because the rest of the roster construction was poor around them. Mark Brooks saw a rumor that New York would trade Cat for KD. Not sure how I feel about that. Not sure how I feel about that either. KD is obviously older than Cat. It's Cat's face, man. King Nacho, I am now banned on 3 Suns podcasts. You want maybe look inward. Maybe you're saying some things that are rude. It's one thing to say Beal should go. It's another thing to talk about women in a negative light and about people's mothers and the babies and things like that. So just inward. Eddie Yee, Bill scored 1 point in a key game. It's so hard to score just 1 point in basketball. So true. So true. All right. Looks like it's just a bunch of talking shit about. All right. Let's go down a little bit before I get to my counterpoint. Saul, I saw a new guy at today at Suns Digest. They just can't keep anyone there. I liked Bruce. I like Bruce too. Bruce writes for Bright Side of the Sun, and he's on the Suns Planet podcast as well. I feel like they had 2 guys who kind of work the Suns Digest, so maybe he has his time off. Derek Lively says Stu. OG Anunoby. Yeah, these are good archetype of players. But like, let's talk about that. Derek Lively, you don't know what Dallas is going to do, so I'm not going to guess. But like OG Anunoby, I wouldn't mind an OG Anunoby return, depending on obviously on what it comes with it. But at the same time, does New York want to give him up? Because he's one of those kind of culture setters that they have over there. They're defensive stalwart guys. That's the other side of trying to give, a team that's seeking a Kevin Durant type has a certain culture behind it and is a Kevin Durant type away for a reason. And he might not want to sacrifice. A lot of teams probably don't want to make the same mistake Phoenix did. Giving up a core like Houston. They're not interested in Kevin Durant. Why? Because they don't want to give up a young core for 2 years of a hired mercenary and an opportunity to try to make a championship run. The Suns made a mistake. We know that. Hakeem Warwick. Yes, Hakeem Warwick, Josh Childress, Hideo Turkoglu. Those were the guys who, they're like, okay, well, we'll just math this together. It'll make sense. Jaden McDaniels. Yeah. Minnesota. If the Suns can get under the second apron and Minnesota can get under the second apron because you can't aggregate salaries in a trade, like Minnesota is a likely destination for a trade. But what we would get back potentially is like Julius Randle, which I don't know how I feel about that. Jaden McDaniels potentially. And for those, and then I'll be going through this next week because I'm going to do a point counterpoint with Devin Booker. And that would kind of be the point counterpoint is if you do move off from KD, you want to stay on Booker because you could probably bring in people like Jaden McDaniels, people like Julius Randle, people who you can try to rebuild and have this tough kind of gritty culture, the things that Matt Ishbia was talking about last season. Could Sabonis be moved or Markkanen? Those could be interesting targets. Sabonis, I have no interest in. Respectfully, the guy's a loser. He's a solid player. He puts up numbers. But when it matters most, he's just not the guy. And he's proven that time and again in Sacramento. They had the Beam team was their one good chance, and he wasn't great. He puts up the stats, but I've never been a huge Sabonis guy. Now, granted, like hindsight's 2020. It's like, oh, if we had traded Sabonis for Ayton when we had a chance, yeah, the disease of what if. But I'm just not a big Saboner guy. All right. 38 minutes into the podcast. I got to remember that for marketing purposes. If you're listening to the podcast, here's an ad. All right, welcome back. The Kevin Durant situation. Counterpoint. Kevin Durant still has value, but maybe not in Phoenix. The counterpoint, trade Durant. All right, so it's time to consider whether Kevin Durant's time in Phoenix is coming to a close. Let's explore why the Suns might need to part ways with him and what that can mean for the future. So it's a new NBA. As I previously mentioned, the new CBA is an absolute game changer. Its prohibitive nature makes it increasingly difficult to build a championship contending team around players with such massive price tags. Kevin Durant is now on his third max contract, and it's a tough spot to be in. This whole trying to build around multiple players on max deal scenario. In today's NBA, stacking two or more of these contracts makes it nearly impossible to sustain long-term success. Why is that? Because simply having two max contracted players on your roster eats up 3/4 of your payroll. Right now the cap is $140. Kevin Durant plus Devin Booker is right around $100 million. That's 3/4 of your payroll right there. So if one of those stars goes down, you're left with nothing. It's an all-in strategy, but it's also a fragile one. And it's an approach that's quickly becoming outdated. Now look around the league. Aside from the Boston Celtics, who are quickly heading into financial hell, because Porzingis, Drew Holiday, those guys are making $20 million a year. That's why they're able to do what they do. They have two max contracted guys and then two guys who could be on max contracts, but because they've been traded around enough, they're not eligible for the max. Not with the same penalty. Derek White, all these guys are on $20 million contracts, and that's a second apron team as well. But the most successful teams, at least right now, are built around a combination of star power, youth, and athleticism. These teams can sustain injuries, remain flexible, and most importantly, they play on both ends of the floor. The older a player gets, the more miles they accumulate, the harder it becomes for them to make an impact on both sides of the ball. Durant has been exceptional offensively, and let's be honest, he might just be the Suns' second best defender. But think about that for a moment. Like, if KD's your second best defender, then something's wrong with your roster construction. And as we've seen time and again, the Suns' roster construction has been far from perfect. So in light of the new CBA, a player like KD makes a lot of sense if he's your only max contract. But given his age and the fact that Devin Booker is in his prime and cruising towards the next maximum contract, it's becoming clear that this pairing might not be the long-term answer the Suns need. There's the issue of the return. I gave you the pros in keeping KD because the return might not be as great as it was. But let's look at it from the other angle. At the trade deadline, reports surfaced that the Suns could have acquired Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, and multiple first-round picks in exchange for Kevin Durant. Looking back with the benefit of hindsight, seeing what Butler's done with Golden State, it's not hard to think that the Suns should have jumped at that opportunity. The potential for a deal like that would have given Phoenix a new dimension, some youth, some scoring, some future assets, and some motherfucker in Jimmy Butler. But of course, the Warriors didn't pull the trigger. It wasn't necessarily that Durant didn't want to play in Golden State. It was more about him not wanting to move mid-season. So they pulled out. It's a tough position for a player of his caliber, with the timing of the trade and affecting his ability to seamlessly transition to a new team. But given the way Butler's performance has played out, it's easy to imagine how that might have dramatically changed the trajectory of Phoenix this season. The disease of what if. If that's the potential return, who's to say that the market will dictate what the market will dictate this offseason? I made the case that the return might not be as high as we expect, considering the new dynamics of the NBA. But it's still likely to be something substantial. And if reports are accurate, with multiple teams reportedly being interested, that only drives up the price. Imagine that. The Suns actually find themselves in a position where a bidding war ensues for Kevin Durant. It's such a far cry from Eric Bledsoe not wanting to be here and the Suns getting back a guy like Greg Monroe. This is different. With multiple teams vying for Durant's services, Phoenix could see a return that brings in serviceable players who align with the team's timeline, although I hate that fucking timeline word. But it's reality. The direction of the organization is key here. Internally, the team must decide what their next move looks like. What path do they want to take? The beauty of the situation is they have options, thanks to the return that Kevin Durant could potentially bring. They're not backed into a corner with a singular approach like they were with Eric Bledsoe. Instead, they have the flexibility to weigh the different offers and choose the direction that best suits their vision. If they want to build a defensively sound, young, athletic team, you can look at column A. If the goal is to load up on draft picks and start from the foundation up, there's column B. Trading Durant opens these possibilities and allows them to shape the future in multiple ways. The other reason you should trade Kevin Durant, the experiment failed, and just accept it. Like, KD was brought to Phoenix with one goal in mind, to bring this team a championship. And while he delivered an impressive 26.8 points per game on 52.7% shooting, including a solid 42.7% from beyond the arc, it's clear that the experiment ultimately fell short. Was it his fault? It's complicated. The truth is, everyone shares some blame for the current state of the Phoenix Suns over the past 2 seasons. Though Durant consistently gave stellar effort on the court, there were ancillary factors, both on and off the court, that may have hindered the team's ability to succeed. The front office certainly didn't help matters by acquiring Bradley Beal, a move that tied up an enormous chunk of payroll and a player who operated much in the same space as both Durant and Devin Booker. It was a misstep, one that complicated the roster and made an already difficult task even harder. Regardless of the reasons behind it, it's clear that the experiment failed. It's time to move on from that chapter. Parting ways with KD while acknowledging the shortcomings of that approach is still the right decision in both the short term and the long term. It offers the Phoenix Suns a better chance at rebuilding and setting a new course for success. So there it is. The reasons to move on from Kevin Durant, the counterpoints, and everything in between. Where do I ultimately stand? Well, before I get to that, I'm going to go back here and read some more comments. King Nacho. If wanting Lindsey Smith back on the pod is offensive to women, then yeah. It's when you're talking shit about Becky Hammon. That's what got their goat, okay? Just shut the fuck up. Just talk about Beal. That's what you do. Which team would we want to trade KD to, says Mark Brooks. Rumored to have interest, Minnesota, New York, Miami, or San Antonio. It's tough. I mean, again, the return is so important here. And it depends on what you want in return. Like, do you want someone column A or someone column B? Like, column A is the situation in which you're trying to get those young defensive players with a few draft picks. And column B is like, I just want draft picks. You know, give me a couple players, but I'm going to save a ton of payroll and I'm going to get a lot of draft picks. So Minnesota doesn't have a ton of draft capital. New York has some. Miami's some. San Antonio has draft capital. So if you want column B, you go San Antonio. If you want column A, Minnesota's a good choice. New York's definitely a good choice. Miami, not so much. Like, I swear to God, if we got like Andrew Wiggins out of the deal, I'd be pissed. Saul, is it me or did the hunger die when KD arrived? I mean, 36 unbothered was the motto for the Suns these last 2 seasons. Yeah, that's part of the reason why you trade him, right? That's me kind of saying that in between the lines, some of the off the court stuff, where as amazing of a player as Kevin Durant is, there are rumors around the team that he's very difficult to work with. He's very one-sided. He just wants to play ball, man, but he's not a great leader, you know, and that's a lot of fire on the Twitter sphere about just that, right? About, you know, whether or not he has leadership, and then he'll go back and forth with fans over that same thing. And one of those fans will say something, they'll see that I said something here, and, you know, yada, yada, yada. King Nacho, I didn't say anything about Becky Hammon. What the fuck? I was there on the podcast and I saw you say it's when they suggested potentially like 4 weeks ago that Becky Hammon should be a head coach, and you said something that was less than something that got you booted from there. Yeah, Saul's right. Just let it go and keep it respectful, or I will boot you too. D-Rock Trainer, Suns would need to be under the second apron before they trade KD if they trade him. I agree with that. And that's the Beal situation, right? You get off Beal's contract, you're under the second apron, you have flexibility. You're not going to use that to stack contracts with Kevin Durant, but it does give you flexibility. And then D-Rock Trainer says, Indiana Pacers is my dark horse for KD. I feel like the Indiana Pacers is the dark horse for a lot of trades in the past. There's asset. We've wanted Miles Turner here in Phoenix forever. He's like Thaddeus Young. Remember Thaddeus Young? We wanted here for like 20 years. He finally came here. We're like, why don't they play him more? Keith Nettles. Hey, gang. Hey, Keith. Pleasure meeting you the other day again. Thanks for coming out and supporting us and hanging out with us. It was truly fun. So where do I stand on this? It's complicated because I can see all sides. What do I want the Phoenix Suns to do? I'll tell you this. Whatever I say right now, I'm so on the edge on either side that it depends on my mood on what I want the Suns to do. Because I'll say this, and again, if you listen to the audio form of this podcast, you can listen to the pod that's currently up right now, where I talk about how I think that you do not blow this up. I've been very adamant that you don't blow this up. You build around Booker. That's primary goal number one. And I have reasons, and again, you can listen to the podcast, but I'll fortify some of that reasoning here right now, because you have an all-star, right? I'd rather have a star, and I think Paradox Joel on Twitter said this today, and he said it so perfectly. God, I got to give this guy credit because I want to make sure I get this right on what exactly he said, because this is exactly how I feel. He says, I'd rather have one star, no role players to build around than have a roster of only role players with no star. Booker and KD are the most important pieces and excellent building blocks. They just have been surrounded by an incompetent front office. That's how I feel. So many people want to punt, and I get it. That's the emotional response right now. Just blow it up. Give me all the draft picks you can. But like, I lived through the timeline, man. I don't want to go through it again. Like, I cover this team. I do this podcast night after night. I'm here for you, Jamsters. I don't want to have to go through shit seasons where the only thing that we have are hope and hype. I want to cover a team that could potentially contend. And so when I look at the Kevin Durant situation, again, I go back and forth. I can see the benefit of trading Kevin Durant because if you give him the extension for 2 years, after that 2 years is up, his value has greatly diminished, and the only thing you're going to be getting is cap relief, which in 2 years could be beneficial for the team, but that's all you'd be receiving in return. Whereas if you move way apart from him right now, you're going to get something back. And that's the same argument people have for Devin Booker, right? And that's something I'll discuss next week when I do the point counterpoint. The Devin Booker situation is just that. They're saying, well, do it and blow it up now instead of 3 years from now. But the difference is 3 years from now, Devin Booker's 31. And 3 years from now, KD's 38. In 3 years from now, you can get a return for Devin Booker. And 3 years from now, you're not going to get much of a return for Kevin Durant. You might get something, but it'll be very minimal. And so that's why, as much as I want to build around this Kevin Durant and Devin Booker window, knowing that it's super important to have two alphas or a Batman and a Robin, two guys who in the last 5 minutes make it extremely tough on opposing teams. I'd have to, I don't know, I'm you, fan base. I'm just like you. We all go back and forth on this. Now, some people have planted their flag firmly on one side or the other of the Kevin Durant situation. And I can't plant my flag solidly on either side. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, Booker, get rid of Durant because of the lack of a return down the line and see what you can do. New coach, potential new general manager, new identity, right? Per Matt Ishbia. Let's see what that is. But I also, the other side of that coin is like, just give me 2 more years of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and get Bradley Beal out of here and build it the way it was supposed to be done 2 fucking summers ago. That's the issue. What say you? Saul, I don't want Katie traded just to see it as the only way they can reset without a total reboot. I feel like Booker's more of that in that line. Like if you trade Booker, you're going to the full reboot. If you get rid of Kevin Durant, it's a retool. It's not a reboot. It's not a rebuild. It's a retool because you'll get a couple players back, a couple picks, which allow flexibility. But again, those couple players, there's so much that needs to happen this offseason, Suns fans. There's so many different avenues that the Suns have before them. And that's why those decisions that are upcoming relative to the front office and the head coach and the identification of their identity is so valuable in these upcoming, this next month, because that draft is going to be here in 2 months, almost to the day. It's in 2 months. And you need to have hard-lined in exactly who you want to be, who you're identifying, the players you're identifying. Because maybe you have a desire to be somebody like a New York Knicks team with the way that they play. They're a 3-and-D team, right? If you want to be like Boston, which is very, 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 very hard to do. Oklahoma City, which is almost impossible. Like the Suns can't Oklahoma City this thing. I mean, potentially they can if they traded Booker and Kevin Durant and then waited 10 years. And in the process, traded for a prospect who eventually becomes an MVP candidate like SGA. But yeah, I'm right with Jay Joyce. The first move has to be getting off Beal. I think from there we see how everything else will go. But I feel like that's a given. That's going to happen, and that's why this is the next situation, the Kevin Durant situation, that's so vitally important. So we'll see. Yeah, I floundered that one, didn't I? This is one I don't have a hard stance on. Much like blowing it up. I feel like I lean definitely more towards not blowing it up. Not necessarily the coach, but the front office because of the weight of this upcoming offseason and the decisions. we'll talk about the Devin Booker situation next week on the Suns Jam Session podcast. And I feel like I'm a little bit more adamant on how I feel relative to that decision. But these are the topics that we're talking about. These are if you go onto Twitter, you go into Reddit, you go to the different Suns forums, these are the conversations we're all having. And I'd like to thank you for hanging out with me while I discussed it with you. Matthew will be back with me next week, and we'll be talking about the Devin Booker situation. But until then, again, thanks for hanging out. Make sure you subscribe, hit that thumbs up button. Be nice to people. Don't just troll, because people get annoying of trolls and then they block trolls. Be the change. Go home, love your family.
Hey, you're listening to the Suns Jam Session podcast, shooting the shit about the Suns since 2019.